Good evening, everyone. This is Gaganjeet Singh from WAF, and I welcome you all to the webinar Machine Learning, Deep Learning, and Their Applications, organized by G. Pulla Reddy Engineering College in association with WAF. I would like to welcome all panelists, our guest speaker, Mr. Kuber Reddy Gorantla, Dr. B. Veerbhadra Reddy, Training and Placement Officer, Mr. M.N. Dakshinamurthy, Manager Corporate Relations, and Mr. Rameshwara Reddy, KV Alumni Coordinator. Now, I would like to invite Dr. B. Veerbhadra Reddy, Training and Placement Officer, to give a warm welcome address. So the
Uh,
platform is all
thanks,
yours.
thanks, Gagan. Good evening to all the participants, and good morning to today's speaker, Kuber. And if any of the participants are from the other side of the world, um, Gagan has just now told that it's being organized by GPREC in association with WOW, but I am thinking that it's organized by WOW in association with GPREC because this was the initiative of WOW. And as most of you who are here attending this webinar may be aware of, WOW is a portal which is meant for connecting alumni to the college. When we think of college, it could be administration, faculty, and students. So that itself is a very good initiative, and it's the alumni, who are considered to be ambassadors of any institution, uh, who make the institution live. And the universities, especially if you see in the western side, which are hundreds of years of old, maybe 200, 300. I heard, from some of the known sources that alumni take part a very active role in making such institutions what they are today. So this particular initiative during the current pandemic by the WOW team to utilize the services of alumni to the benefit of students and also to some extent faculty, because as it is said, a teacher is the first learner. I don't see a student and a teacher in different perspective when it comes to knowledge acquisition and continuous learning. In fact, sometimes we need more learning than what students do need. So in that perspective, the initiative taken by WOW is really worth appreciating. I congratulate them. And if we look at the positive side of any situation, it's not a philosophy, but then it's quite normal to think that this is a situation which we should not have seen, unfortunately, or whatever it is, probably this is the generation which we are seeing. And I feel never before in the history, the entire world, thought about one single issue, one single crisis. Even maybe during the times of world wars, I think not all the countries were hit. So that is the situation we are in. But on the positive side, let's see the technology, digital technology that has come to our rescue. Earlier, when we had to invite alumni to the college, it used to take a lot of effort physically to travel from the place of their living to the institution where they studied. It's really a very tough ask. And now see how everybody, even a kid of LKG or UKG, adopted to this mode of learning, whether it be teaching or learning. Anybody from anywhere in the world can speak, and anybody from anywhere can listen. And this is the single most positive thing that I take out of the pandemic, which now we are all experiencing. And we as teachers also got to use to it. In general, students get adjusted to new things very quickly. It's difficult for teachers to get adjusted. But I sometimes feel we are more comfortable now, because we are able to connect with any person and any number of times. We don't have the time of limitations of time and space. There are no geographical barriers. So with this context, I would like to once again welcome all the participants on behalf of WOW and on behalf of the student community and faculty fraternity who are joining this session this evening. I am very happy that today's speaker happens to be alumnus of our college, and more happy that I got an opportunity to teach a few courses to him. And also when he was a student here, he used to take very active part in the affairs of alumni committee. And I think that may be running in the mind of Kuber. He used to receive alumni and then be with them during the alumni meetings, and then whenever such events happened in the college at that point in time. So with this, I thank team WOW for giving me this opportunity, and I wish all the participants happy learning for the next 45 minutes or so. Thank you. Over to you, Gagan.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for a warm welcome. Now I would like to welcome a special welcome for our guest speaker, Mr. Kuber Reddy Gorantla, who is an eminent alumnus of G. Pulla Reddy Engineering College from the class of 2014, BTech Mechanical Engineering. He went on to pursue his career in research, as a part of which he has worked as a research engineer in product design and development from the conceptual stage till the design for manufacturability with global projects at Hyundai Motor India Research and Development. In 2016, he started his Master of Science focused on machine learning and data science in building intelligent systems through design and optimization, wherein his main research interest was on pattern recognition and artificial intelligence. He went on to publish a conference paper on IEEE, namely Engineering in Medicine and Biology, EMBC 2019, and the topic published was Surgical Skill Assessment using Motor Control Features and Hidden Markov Model. The conference was held in Germany, where he attended and presented his research topic on assessing surgical skills autonomously during robot-assisted surgery. Currently, Mr. Kuber is working as a computer vision scientist with ChemImage Corporation US, and his main focus is in pattern recognition, machine learning, and deep learning research. He works on developing artificial intelligence and deep learning algorithms in computer vision with projects related to healthcare and life sciences and AI. Apart from that, his research interests include journal medicine learning, journal machine learning, algorithms, and deep reinforcement learning in computer vision. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite our guest speaker, Mr. Kuber Reddy Gorantla, to start webinar on machine learning, deep learning, and their applications.
Thank you very much, Gagan. Hello all. Good morning to everyone. I mean, good evening to all of the ones who are there in India. So, thank you very much for the nice introduction, Gagan. And then I personally want to thank Ramesh Reddy sir and Dakshinamurthy sir to contact me personally about this webinar. And I'd like to give my warm thanks to Dr. Veerabhadra Reddy sir, who has taken initiative to give out the word of initiation. And welcome all. I'm gonna for the next probably like 40-45 minutes. I'm gonna present a topic called machine learning, deep learning, and their applications. So in major, basically right now, I just want to focus mostly on what a machine learning can do, what deep learning can do, and what are their state-of-the-art applications. So rather than going in depth, I don't think the time would be sufficient for sure in order to discuss about each and every topic in detail. If you have any questions, we would carry forward to the end. Other than that, I'd like to start presenting it. Let me share the screen. I hope all of you can see my screen.
Yeah, it's visible. Yeah.
Okay. So this topic is about machine learning, deep learning, and their applications. So rather than me Okay. Rather than me telling about what are the pros and cons of machine learning and artificial intelligence, I'd like to briefly show you a video which would actually tell both the pros and cons about the machine learning. I'd like you to watch just for a moment.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or how about this? Simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. It's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. It may sound basic, but how we move forward in the age of information is.
So in here, basically Mr. Barack Obama would like to tell us about what are the pros and cons of the machine learning and artificial intelligence. So in this video, if you can see, basically this is a very recent research in 2019, I guess. So using the GANs, like the generative adversarial networks, which is a part of the unsupervised learning and machine learning, if a person speaks in his own voice, you can make it as it seems like some other person, some other famous personality is actually doing it. So this is the major application of deep learning and machine learning current research is going on. So I'd like to give a very small activity for you guys. Can you just let me know among these 6 figures, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you can just type it in the chat app. I would like to see the answers. Which of these faces do you think are real? I'd like to give 1 minute probably. You can use the chat app to actually show me which of these faces do you think are real? Okay, thank you for your answers. So basically the answer is none of the faces are real. So these are all the faces generated using generative adversarial networks, which is a part of the unsupervised learning, where it's gonna take the faces or the human faces normally and then learn the distributions to generate the new faces, new unsupervised distributions. So from the same distribution, it's going to generate new faces. So none of these faces are real. Everything is fake. So thank you very much for the answers. Now I'd like to go ahead with the outline of my presentation. So basically, I'd like to discuss what is pattern recognition and what are their applications, and machine learning in general. What is the machine learning and why do we need to do machine learning, and deep learning and its growth. I'd like to particularly give an introduction about autonomous vehicles and AI assisted driving. It's like the current research is going on, the industry is far ahead. So I would like to just touch up on the base of what they are doing. And basically, according to me, my suggestions about courses, tutorials, and books, what machine learning resources that you can find online, and the machine learning in general, and their basics and their types. And I'd like to particularly explain about a machine learning and deep learning project in medical domain. And after that, there are some limitations to deep learning as well, which we'll discuss further. So pattern recognition, basically pattern recognition is an automated way of recognizing the patterns and regularities in data. So what does it mean? So when you send, like, let's say in this figure, if you can see, this is a Mars rover. This is a prototype of the Mars rover. So where NASA has sent a rover to Mars. So when it actually goes into a new environment, what does the machine have to do? Let's say, for example, it has to navigate from one place to other place to know about the texture of the surface as well. So when you move from one place to other place, a machine has to think whether it is a hard surface or a soft surface, whether is it safe to go or not to go, whether is it going down the valley or up the hill. So at every point in time, this machine has to take a decision. So for their decisions at every point in time, it's gonna learn usually. So what happens is how a human brain learns. So there are 5 different senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and then general feel of the touch. So when you see with the eyes, you would actually localize certain objects. Like, for example, I would say, I have seen a rock. So I would think that I should not step on that rock. But how does a machine know it? And ears, nose, and tongue, and heart, and so on. So basically, this pattern recognition is basically what are we aiming here in pattern recognition is we have to model a thinking process, a machine thinking process, which is actually very similar to the human being. And then there is one more thing that human being can do, which is learning. So let's say, for example, learning by example, like let's say I do not know certain address in Kurnool, let's say. So let's take the Kurnool as an option. I do not know the G. Pulla Reddy Engineering College. Where is it, let's say. So how do you learn? So even if you don't know about G. Pulla Reddy Engineering College or where is it, you can definitely be confident that you will be able to learn. So how does a human being do that? So this thinking process, this learning capability should be adapted into a machine, and which is a whole part of pattern recognition. So pattern recognition has a gamut of applications where there are large number of independent subjects evolved from pattern recognition, which are image processing, computer vision, natural language processing, neural networks, etc. So currently the literature in pattern recognition is, I would say, epsilon. So it still has to go a lots and lots further. So there is a lot of very interesting research that is going on right now, but I would say that it's still in an infant stage where you can easily fool a machine to do something else. So what is this machine learning and why do we do ML? So as I mentioned about the learning capability, so there is something like a machine can learn in certain process. I would like to let you know why exactly we do it and what do we do it. So machine learning, it is really very hard to write programs when you don't have the complete description of the task, let's say. So let's say an object is there in a cluttered scene, in a new lighting conditions, or maybe in a low lighting conditions. You might be able to see the outer line edges of the object, but you would not be you cannot confidently say that that's a particular object, like maybe a dog, maybe a cat, or maybe something else. So basically what we do here is we don't know what to program. So we give the machine to learn, like the capability to learn based on other situations that are available in the environment. So basically, even if you do want to program that, like general hard programming, it's going to be really difficult. So, and hence you would give the machine a capability to learn, and it will learn automatically and adapt to the new situations. So let's say one more example I can say is the probability that a credit card transaction is fraudulent. One thing is credit card transactions are really tricky to find out whether they are fraudulent or not. So let's say, for example, you have at the same time there is a credit card transaction in Hyderabad and then let's say in Pakistan. So you would definitely be under suspicion and then check it out. But usually the fraud is a moving target, so it can actually change and then the program has to change accordingly. So rather than that, you would use machine learning to actually detect a fraudulent transaction. So for example, how this machine learning is carried out right now, instead of writing a program by hand at each specific task, which is a cost oriented, and you might need lots of expertise and lots of time as well. Instead of that, we collect lots of examples that a specified output is given for the given input. So what we do is we have the output and we have the input, we give them to the system, and then the system or the machine would learn accordingly using different kinds of machine learning. And based on that, it's going to give its output. So the problem with the machine learning and deep learning is it actually needs massive amount of computation, which is really time consuming as well. So lots of research is going on how to reduce the number of computations and how to reduce the number of layers, how to reduce basically the complexity of the model. So that is where the research is heading in machine learning. So I'd like to briefly let you know about the deep learning, its growth, celebrations, and limitations. So deep learning is a part of the machine learning community, machine learning and pattern recognition. So deep learning is just a single part of it, where the deep, in the sense, the number of layers inside a machine would increase, more number of computations and more number of layers inside a machine. So that is in layman terms to be told about deep learning. So what is this artificial intelligence in context of human history? So how this deep learning has evolved? I'd like to just touch up the base on it. So Alan Turing, if you you might know, like, he's considered one of the fathers of computer science, and he's a very famous computer scientist. He mentioned in 1951 that when the machine's thinking process has started, it's gonna get some feeble powers. So they would be able to converse with each other against their words. So you might have seen a lot of fake news somewhere that two agents have been talking to each other, and then they have developed their own language or something like that. I think it's not that far yet. So those might be mostly the fake news. And then, but there is definitely a possibility. So where comes the algorithm ethics and then the machine learning ethics? We need to imbibe into the machine learning process, so that it cannot misuse whatever the technology that we develop. And there's one more where Mr. Frank, he has developed a single layer and multi-layer artificial neural networks. So single layer perceptron is introduced by him. So single layer perceptron is something, a part of a very subunit of a deep learning neural network. So what this deep learning has done in the past is Gary Kasparov, if you know, he's a chess grandmaster. He has been a chess grandmaster for around 255 months, if I remember that correctly. So in 1997, he lost to a machine, Deep Blue, where he was a grandmaster and then he lost it to a machine. And then in 2016, a famous game called Go. The Go game is considered as one of the toughest games in the world right now. So in that Go game, the machine was able to use certain deep reinforcement learning, and then able to beat Lee Sedol. He's one of the world champions during the 2016. So what are the gamut of applications that I've mentioned about deep learning? What all deep learning can do? I'd like to show a few brief videos in order to get in touch with what's going on with deep learning and machine learning. So basically, in the first video, I'd like to play, this is a Tesla video where it's using, the Tesla car is using autonomous driving. And if you can see the person inside the car, he doesn't control the car at all. So this is a complete autonomous driving, where this Tesla is actually taking a certain different approach, where they just use the computer vision and then deep learning to actually navigate autonomously among all the vehicles that are there on the road. So I would say that this is going to be easier in probably certain different countries, might not be easier in India. So India, definitely, as you know, there's a lot of traffic, and then there could be a lot of uncertainties, and the deep learning has to go a long way to actually autonomously navigate through in India, particularly in some of the places where the cluttered places are there, where there are a lot of people and all. So there's one more application I'd like to show, which is Boston Dynamics Spot. Boston Dynamics is actually working on andro-humanoid robots. So this andro-humanoid robots, they will be autonomously able to navigate without any input. So I'd like to show a brief video about this. So if you can see in this video, basically it is able to autonomously navigate with the help of computer vision and then deep learning and some other sensors that it can sense with. So there are a lot of modalities that are taken into consideration, not just the vision. So there is one more robot that actually caught my interest, which is Atlas. That's a bipedal humanoid robot. It can actually jump like what humans can do. If you can see this video right now. So the best part of this robot is you can actually make it work at your lobby or something else to actually take the certain weights and keep moving certain weights from one place to other place, as well as autonomously navigate through that. So these two are the Boston Dynamics research that caught my interest, and then this is one of the famous deep learning applications that is there right now in the industry. So one of the recent research I'd like to show right now is using cyclic GANs, which are basically generative adversarial networks. So it will take the input to the network as just the horse and then the background right here in the first video, in the first part of the video. And then the second part, it will automatically generate where it's very similar to the horse, if you can see. So in this video, the first part of the video is just taking the generative models are just taking the inputs from the horse, and then it's going to learn the distribution, and then it's going to create its own distribution by perturbations using the cyclic GANs. So these are all the state-of-the-art applications that are going on right now. And you can see there are a lot of numerous of applications in every industry that is possible. So I would definitely like to mention about the Turing Award for Deep Learning, which is Turing Award is considered as the Nobel Prize for Computing, where Turing Award for Deep Learning has been given to Geoffrey Hinton, Yann LeCun, and then Yoshua Bengio. So these three are the pioneers in machine learning and deep learning, where they have introduced very groundbreaking theories initially. So if you see, Geoffrey Hinton is he has introduced the backpropagation algorithm. Backpropagation algorithm is something how a deep neural network would actually train on. And Yann LeCun and then Yoshua Bengio, Yann LeCun is basically, he has developed convolutional neural networks, which are a part of computer vision right now. Like deep learning and computer vision, it's basically a part of, like the convolutional neural networks are the main part of it. And then Yoshua Bengio, he's responsible for neural machine translation as well. While if you can see, like there is some kind of, probably a Chinese language that you wanted to convert in English. So it can automatically convert using the language translator. And those language translators are a part of Yoshua Bengio's research, neural machine translation. All of this research has gone into various industries. Like, for example, there are very good research topics, which are reasoning, active learning, multimodal learning, medical and autonomous vehicles, and algorithm ethics and robotics. So multimodal learning is something like you would not just see the input from the normal human eye. You would use certain other modalities like LiDAR or something else to actually autonomously navigate from one place to other place. And as I mentioned about algorithm ethics, we just definitely need to think about algorithm ethics. It is not just the performance of the system or a machine that's going on in the industry. It's also the ethics that we give to the algorithm, and then what are the limitations and how do we actually encounter, come out of the limitations. And there are a lot of other applications in robotics, as I mentioned. So what are these autonomous vehicles and AI-assisted driving? So I would like to particularly mention about two cases, which are, one thing is Tesla. It's an L2 system, basically. L2 system in the sense driver must remain vigilant inside the car, even if it is autonomously navigating. And one more example is Waymo. Waymo is used by Google. Like Google has developed Waymo autonomous navigation system. So these two are competing with each other, let's say. And then Tesla is actually taking completely different approach, as I mentioned earlier, which is using the vision sensors, so computer vision and then the deep learning. So the pros of it would be like, it's going to get the highest resolution information, and then there's a lot of data at scale that, and there's a lot of data to learn as well. And roads are designed for human eyes, so how we autonomously navigate, it's going to take the same kind of navigation attitude when it comes to the Tesla car. But when it comes to Google, I mean Waymo, it's going to take the LiDAR, light detection and ranging, where in this figure, if you can see at the top right, bottom right, sorry, it's going to use the light detection and ranging, where it's going to send the laser signals and then collect the depth information as well as the distance information from one object to another object. And it also uses the Google Maps. So it combinedly uses both of them. The cons of it would be, this is an L2 system where the Tesla is an L2 system, which is driver must remain still vigilant about, and he cannot be 100% sure that it can autonomously navigate. But whereas Waymo is actually able to navigate autonomously. I mean, you can be confident about how autonomous it can be. And yeah, of course, this is basically very expensive, like the LiDAR sensors, but just with the help of cameras, Tesla is able to get that. So these are basic courses and tutorials. If you want to make a note of it, I would just suggest, if you're a very newbie to a machine learning, I would say the first course that you need to take is Machine Learning by Andrew Ng in Coursera. And these are other resources that machine learning and deep learning are there outside. So there are some very good lectures on convolutional neural networks and natural language processing from Stanford, as well as the deeplearning.ai course, as most of you might know it already. So Andrew Ng is actually heading it, and the reinforcement learning as well, if you're interested. So I would like to briefly tell about the machine learning basics and their types. What types of machine learning are there? So we have seen a machine will be able to learn in variety of environments, variety of conditions. So how does it actually learn? So what types of machine learning are there? So the machine learning, basically, the definition given by Tom Mitchell. Tom Mitchell is currently the professor at CMU, Carnegie Mellon University. He's a computer scientist, and then he has a lot of contributions to machine learning. So he explained machine learning as the study of algorithms that improve their task performance at some task with experience. So basically, as we gain the experience, it's going to learn from the inputs that are there. So, and then, so whatever the application it is, so it's going to basically learn and then do the task. So let's say example, playing chess, as I mentioned, Deep Blue has actually beaten Garry Kasparov. So the machine, that's the best example I can say, that a machine will be automatically able to learn by itself. So there are various kinds of machine learning. One is supervised learning, unsupervised learning, semi-supervised learning, and then the reinforcement learning. So I would like to very briefly discuss about each of these learning types. Supervised learning is something like you are under certain supervision. So the machine is under certain supervision, where the supervision would be the output given to a machine. Let's say, for example, I want to classify certain objects as either a dog or a cat or some other animal, maybe, let's say. So if I want to do that, first I have to give the inputs to the machine. The machine should know whether they are cat or dog or something else, in the supervised learning particularly. So when you give these labeled observations to the machine, it's going to be, first basically have to divide that into a training set and a test set, where we would like to test how the machine performs on the test set. So using the training set, the machine would learn. The machine learner would take maybe the machine learning, just the machine learning, where you introduce the hand engineered features, other than, or maybe a deep learning where you're going to just give the images to the machine, and then it's going to automatically learn to predict a model. And using that model, we're going to test on the test set to provide the statistics. So this is something like supervised learning, where the machine is under always under constant supervision. So one more is unsupervised learning, where you would say, okay, I would give dogs and cats, but I do not know which is dog, which is cat, or something like that. So let's say, even if you know, like you might just give the unstructured representation, where in unsupervised learning, you won't tell the machine that it's a dog or it's a cat. So it's going to automatically learn through unsupervised representations. So deep learning, if you can see in this particular part of image, it's going to learn about the unsupervised representations that are there inside a deep learning model. So for example, in this particular case, you are trying to provide a facial recognition. A facial recognition, how does it work? In the low level, basically, it's going to learn the features that are there, edges or something like that, and high level, it's going to learn about the facial features. So this, it's going to learn using a deep neural network. The deep neural network basically it understands the representations that are there. You might not know whether it's a dog or whether it's a cat, but you would know how does a cat look like, how does a dog look like. You don't know the labels at all, but you would be able to differentiate cat and a dog. So this is something, an example of unsupervised learning, where there are different types of unsupervised learnings: clustering, anomaly detection, association, and autoencoders. So clustering, as I mentioned, you are given like different species of birds and different species of some other, or like maybe a dog or maybe a cat. So let's say, how does the machine learn is using the unsupervised learning, it's going to learn the representations or the similarities between the features of a certain class. So let's say all the dogs would come under a certain class. So it's going to classify that as all the dogs are in a certain class, but it's not, the class is not defined there that it's a dog or it's a cat or something else. So one more detection is anomaly detection. So as I mentioned about the credit card transaction, so you have to look for unusual patterns in the system. So whenever, I think I've just mentioned the same example, where say, let's say credit card transaction is happening in Hyderabad and Pakistan at the same time. So you would definitely be under suspicion. You might actually know that there is at least one transaction that is fraudulent among that. And there's something called association learning. So let's say in Amazon, you have ordered a smart TV or something else, like a normal TV, let's say. And then in the online shopping cart, you would keep the TV. And then Amazon would automatically suggest people who bought this would also bought this, or something like, you might be very interested in doing this. So let's say Chromecast. So if you buy a TV, it's going to automatically suggest you can buy a Chromecast as well to that. So that's one more kind of unsupervised learning, where you just know the similarities between them, between how they work together, but you don't know what they are. So you definitely know how they work together. So that is basically, that comes under the unsupervised learning. So autoencoders are something which are really good research right now. So autoencoders take the deep input data and then compress it into a code to learn the representation with compression, and then it recreates the input data. So basically, as I mentioned in the second slide, where there are different phases. So it's a special part of autoencoders where it's going to learn the distributions from certain phases in the real world, and then it's going to automatically generate new phases. So one more is the semi-supervised learning, in which so basically this semi-supervised learning, you would have certain labels and not the all the labels for the data that is there. So let's say, for example, COVID-19 detection using CT scans. So CT scans have already been like used to how do you detect, like, there is an infection in the lungs or something, like there is a whitish part of it inside the CT scan. You will be able to detect that part of it easily. And there are a lot of scans that are available already who has COVID, and then there should be some data, health data. So you using that data, you can in a semi-supervised manner, you can say that whether there is a COVID or not in his lungs. So one more is cancer detection using pathology. Pathology is something like a study of diseases and tumors using the blood samples. So in this, the clinical grade AI, this is a Nature publication. I have to mention that, like, that's a very good publication recently about the semi-supervised learning or the weakly supervised learning. So in this, basically they take the samples, the blood samples on a plate, and then they observe for the anomalies or the outliers or something like a lesions or some kind of tumor that is there. They'll be able to easily observe. So whatever the reports that are there already available, using those reports, the deep neural network gonna train on that and then predict in the next stage. So next is reinforcement learning. So we have discussed about supervised, unsupervised, and semi-supervised, and the last is the reinforcement learning. In this kind of learning, the machine learning agents would be attempting to find an optimal way to accomplish a goal. Let's say, for example, this is an OpenAI robot, which is actually learning how a Rubik's Cube is solved. So basically, we solve a Rubik's Cube based on very number of iterations, and then we try to learn that. So similar to that, very close to artificial general intelligence, the reinforcement learning is heading its pace. Now I'd like to mention about particular application in medical domain. I have included all of the applications in various other industries as well. I would like to particularly mention about medical domain, which is a tricky part of the machine learning and deep learning sense. So this, I'd like to discuss about my paper, which I've published in IEEE, in engineering and medicine and biology. So basically what this paper talks about is surgical skill assessment using motor control features and hidden Markov models. So in the robot assisted surgery, so there is something called robot assisted surgery, open surgery, and then minimally invasive surgery, and so on. So in this particular robot assisted surgery, you would not only have to learn the technical skills, but there are other surgical competence skills where knowledge, decision making, and communication skills. So this research is just about the technical surgical skills of a surgeon. So basically, why do we need to assess the surgical skills of a surgeon? There are a couple of possible reasons. One thing is, when you actually work on a robot, you might be a surgeon, an open surgeon, or minimally invasive. You might have done lots and lots of surgeries, maybe thousands of surgeries, but you would not be able to be comfortable in a robot assisted surgery where that's a new environment. In this figure, if you can see, the surgeon would sit at a comfortable place and then manipulate the robots, and using that master manipulators will be actually able to do the surgery on a patient. So first thing is, when you want to know whether a surgeon is an expert or a novice, definitely what you would do is you would make him contact the other expert surgeon who is already there in the industry, and then you'll ask him that, let him know like how he performs. So how does he do? One thing is, he would see the operation and then or the surgery, and then say that, okay, if there is a complication to the patient after the surgery, then you're going to say that, okay, he is not that of an expert. I mean, he doesn't do it directly on a patient. Let's say he does it on a certain animal. And then the way he manipulates or the way he moves his instruments is a key part that we can think that that is a part of expertise. So the same thinking process should be installed in the machine, a software, and then say that, okay, I give the videos of the surgeons, how they perform on a patient or in an animal or something else. And then the system or the software should assess whether he's an expert or a novice. So that was my research, basically. And I'd like to briefly talk about my research and how it's done. So I would like to show you a brief video about, so in this particular part, basically a surgeon is actually using the surgical instruments, forceps, and then trying to perform certain tasks. So this particular task is urethrovesical anastomosis. So in this particular task, the way they handle the instruments is a key part, and we need to assess certain, using certain metrics, we need to assess how they perform in the surgery. So that's a part of my research where I'm currently working, I actually worked on. So in this thing, the input would be a video that is given to you by a surgeon to the software. So what we do is, let's say an expert surgeon would actually assess the whole video and say that, okay, he's not an expert, or he might be a novice, he did not perform well. The way he handled the tissues, he might have created certain damage to the tissues, etc. like that. So an expert surgeon would actually give this kind of impressions when he's actually a novice or not an expert. So in order to build that system, in order to build the thinking process to the software, what we have done is, basically I've used a variable epoch. So if you're given, let's say, 10 minutes of video, in that 10 minutes of video, do you think that if he's an expert, do you think that he is going to be expert at every part of the video? The answer is obviously no. So I would like to basically assess, the video has to be divided into certain time intervals. So what time interval should it divide? So what is the best time interval that you can divide and assess the surgical skills of a surgeon? That's the part of my research. So basically you will be given the time window, you'll be given a video, and I would like to divide that into a time variable epoch, like 5 seconds intervals, 10 seconds intervals, 20 second intervals, and so on. So you would basically learn the feature vectors from there, and using the feature selection, we're going to select the significant features, because you never know which is going to be significant to the machine and which is not. So I would like to say a best example where let's say you want to classify a person as whether, let's say, an Indian or American. So you would easily say that, like maybe based on his color, maybe based on his texture, maybe based on his size, you would be easily able to say. So these are only certain features that you're easily picking it up. So you might never know what a machine would actually pick up, which significant features would be there. And then those significant features, using a machine learning model, it's going to classify that into expert analysis. So what features do you need to take? Whether, as I mentioned earlier, an expert surgeon would see the surgical video and then say with what degree of smoothness he is moving the in surgical instruments, and then the maximum velocity, coefficient of variation of velocity, idle time. So idle time is, let's say, if you're a novice and you're doing a surgery, then you would take a lot of time to think whether I should cut this part or I should not cut this part, or you know the task already, but you never know. If you're a novice, you never know that what you should do in the next step. So you might take a lot of time. So that's one of the features that can be considered, that if you're going to take a lot of time, you are usually generally a novice. So it is not just that it is based on single feature that if you just take a lot of time, you'll be a novice. It's not like that. So there are a lot of other features that are considered, like 24 features in total. So the degree of smoothness is the way that you operate with the surgical instruments, and the maximum velocity, how random your movements are inside a surgical video, and then the coefficient of variation of velocity, let's say. So let's say I've divided that video into 30-second intervals. In particular 30-second interval, let's say you pick up certain 30-second interval and then see how the variation of velocity is there. Are you doing a random movement? Random movement, there'll be a lot of variation. And if you basically take a smoother movement, it's going to be less variation. So something like that. There are a lot of different features that are considered, and the total absolute turning angle, which is the total amount of angle that you turn your instruments with, as I shown in the video. And how much path length are you taking, and the curvature, how good is the curvature that you have moved your hand. So using a machine learning model, which is support vector machines. So I have trained a model using the significant features that are there. So among this, particularly here, the significant features that are selected in the to assess the surgical video is degree of smoothness, idle time, number of segments, and the area of convex hull that is taken. So basically there are two hands, dominant hand and non-dominant hand. So dominant hand is something like right-handed or a left-handed person. So for right-handed, right hand is the dominant hand, and then the left-handed, the left. So using these features, how a machine will be able to classify that he's an expert or a novice. So using the support vector machines model. So basically there are, let's say, how many features are selected? There are 6 features here. So it's basically a 6-dimensional space. So in that 6-dimensional space, you would be able to classify whether he is an expert or a novice. So using those features, and I have divided that video into 5-second, 10-second, 20-second, and so on, 50-second, 350-second intervals. And then I found out that very interesting part of it, that it's going to take like 30 to 40-second intervals. So if say the video is divided into 30 seconds or 35 or 40, you're going to get the maximum accuracy. So you already know the labels that he is an expert or a novice. So based on the machine learning model, you would calculate the test performance. So in this, so what I was able to find out is, if you divide that video into 30 to 40-second intervals, you're going to get the maximum accuracy. So whenever a new video is given to you from a surgeon, so just divide that into 30 and 40-second intervals, and then take these features in order to assess the surgical skills. So it is not just that, so basically what I've done is, in the earlier part, every 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and 20 seconds are taken independent of each other. So what that means is, if you're a novice or an expert in the first 30 seconds of the video, you might be anything in the next 30 seconds. So earlier that I have considered that. But now using the hidden Markov models, using the Markov chain, so there is something like context dependency. So let's say in first 30 seconds, you are an expert. You would be mostly an expert in the next 30 seconds as well, immediate next 30 seconds. So in order to consider that dependency, I have used the hidden Markov model, and then say, I've tried to increase the accuracy, classification accuracy. So in this, you can see the transition probability matrices. So let's say first 30 seconds, you are a novice, and then you would be a novice with a probability of 0.7, and you would be an expert with a probability of 0.3. And if you are an expert, you would be a novice with the probability of 0.1, and mostly you would be an expert in the next 30 seconds. So it has a higher probability that you would be an expert in the next 30 seconds. So using this at every epoch, I have classified, and then I was able to classify like novices with 100% accuracy and experts with 95.24% accuracy. This is really great result, I would say, because the reason is one thing you would be wary about should be whenever he's a novice and you are given a novice video to a surgeon or to a system, machine learning system, it definitely has to identify that he is a novice. Otherwise, if he goes onto a original surgery and then do the surgery on humans, there might be a lot of complications to that. So you would be able to classify, you would be at least able to know that he is a novice. So that is what I found out from the analysis from these different epochs, from different videos. So basically I've taken 12 subjects and assess the inter-subject classification as well. So for example, 30 to 40 second intervals, I have taken the percentage of expertise. So let's say S1 to S6, these are novices, and S7 to S12, these are experts. So these two are also the experts, but their expertise is very low. The system has detected that their expertise is very low. And what we have confirmed after that is S8 and S9 they're really, really experienced, and they're not able to move the hands of an instrument at all. I mean, they're pretty old actually. So this is an interesting result that we got when we actually analyzed, me and the professor. So basically what this threshold does is, so whenever you are given a new video of a surgeon, so you would divide that into 30 second intervals, and let's say 45% of the time, if you are considered as an expert, then you will be an expert. So that is what we have found out from the analysis. And finally, about the limitations of deep learning. So I have mentioned about, there are a lot of applications, numerous applications, and there is a lot of hype going on in AI and deep learning. But what is the problem with deep learning? I would like to just show you. So there are a lot of applications, limitations of deep learning, and there are new frontiers as well. So one thing is, this paper is published by Google Brain. So Google Brain, what they have done is they have taken certain number of images from the ImageNet database. ImageNet database is something developed by Stanford in collaboration. So ImageNet database, it will have every image and their labels as well accordingly. So let's say this is a dog, banana, and then dog and then tree. So let's say we're gonna randomize these labels. Let's say if we just give these original labels, it's gonna easily, like the deep neural network can actually classify whether it's a dog or a banana very easily. Let's say we give the false labels. Let's say randomly we give this as banana, this as dog, this as tree, and this as dog as well. So what Google Brain has actually found out was it was able to perfectly fit the training set. So that means that whatever the labels that you give to a system, it is able to learn and somehow fit the deep neural network so that it is able to classify. So let's say you have given a dog, but you have given that label as banana. So whenever you have given a dog in the future, it's going to classify that as banana. So there is a very, very big limitation with this. So that means that whenever you develop certain machine learning system to work on certain specific task, it doesn't work on the other task. So that is what is something like generalization. So we have to rethink about this generalization whenever we actually train the deep neural networks. And there's one more example where neural networks are very, very good function approximators. So let's say whatever data you give, it is able to learn and somehow fit that data onto a curve. So let's say these are data points that are given to you, and then it is able to fit a curve in that data points. But you never know the other training distribution. So let's say it has approximated a function like this, and then you take the data points from here. It might not be the actual data points that are there. So that means an example that I can give you is an adversarial attack example. So where you would take an original image. So this original image, if you are given to a network, it's going to classify that as temple 97%, with 97% probability that the machine can say that it's a temple. But when you give a random noise, very small noise, which is a perturbation, if you give that, it's going to detect something else, like maybe an ostrich or maybe something else. So with the help of just very small noise, you would be easily able to fool the network and say that this is not a temple, but this is something else. So these are certain limitations of the deep learning. And there are other lot of various other limitations as well. One is data hungry. As I mentioned, the machine has to see lots and lots of data examples, and then it's highly computationally intensive. And it is, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, it is easily fooled by the adversarial examples. It's like very small noise or very small perturbation. If you give to the system, it's going to detect something else. And it's highly algorithmically biased based on the data that you take. So the amount of data is very important. Like when you take a data, you would have to equally give the number of classes for each other. Like let's say cats and dogs. So cats and dogs, you say there are 100 images right now. In that 100 images, if you say 80 of the images are dogs and then 20 of the images are cat, then most probably when a new image, 101th image is given to the system, then it's going to most probably say that it's a dog. So you have to be very careful about how the data is given to the network as well. And it is very poor at representing the uncertainty. So it should know whether the model knows or not. So that means that if you are given like, let's say cat and dog, you are given and then you have trained the system, then you would give a horse example and say, okay, classify this. So even if you give the horse example to a neural network, it's still going to classify it as either a cat or a dog because it has seen only the examples from that classes. So that is uncertainty where you never know. The system should at least be able to say that this is not cat, this is not dog, this is something else. The system should say that, but unfortunately, it's really difficult to mention that unless you mention certain other class as well. And most important is the uninterpretable black boxes. So deep neural networks usually you never know what's going on in the system, what it is actually learning, how those representations are learned. So those are called as black boxes. So right now there is some research going on in explainable AI where you can explain what's going on, but it is still under research. And finicky to optimize, which is non-convex function. So generally, whenever the function is non-convex, it might be able to find a local minimum rather than a global minimum. So there is a problem always with these neural networks. So, and when you want to design certain neural networks for a particular task, you would definitely need an expert knowledge to design that and fine tune the architectures, which is like expensive, quite expensive. So the new frontiers, which are multitask learning using uncertainty. So basically, as I mentioned earlier in the examples, so using the uncertainty, it's going to learn based on the, and then do the multitasks automatically. So one more is learning to learn. So basically, Google is actually performing certain research in learning to learn, where you give the machine, you design an algorithm to the machine and then say that, okay, I want to learn this task. So what model should I use to learn this task? So let's say, so that's an example of the AutoML where this is the more closer to artificial general intelligence, where artificial general intelligence is defined as the ability to intelligently reason about how we learn. So these deep learning models would be more accessible to the public as well. So that's the very interesting research that is going on. All right. So yeah, I'm done with the presentation. If you have any questions, I would be happy to take them.
Thank you, Kuber, for a wonderful presentation. Can we are we left with any slides?
No, those are just the backup slides. I mean, if anybody has any questions, I might be able
to. Okay. So can I get you on screen then? If I stop your sharing, yeah. So we'll just start with this question. It got maximum likes. Okay, so it's just because of COVID. So using quantum computer AI and advanced algorithms, can vaccine be discovered for COVID-19 at the earliest? So what's your take on that?
So basically, I would say that it's not that simple. So let's say I think there is a lot of research going on in detecting the kind of vaccines that are there. The major problem here is whatever the technology that you use, the variability that is there around the world is very difficult. So why the vaccine would take like lots and lots of years to come out? The only reason is it has a lots of variability, and then it has a lot of different effects on different persons from different backgrounds or different areas. So I would say the major problem with discovering anything would be to cover the variability. Even if you want a machine to learn it as well, you would like to introduce that variability into a system, which is really difficult. So I think it's definitely possible, but might not be very fast. So I think that according to the current research that is going on in COVID to discover a vaccine, this is going at a very fast pace.
Right. So there's this question by Mr. Ajay Verma, and a very important question for students, because today we have a lot of students as your participants. Where can I acquire machine learning skills?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I've shared certain slide. Can I share my screen once?
Yes. So
Okay.
just, yeah.
Let's say. So these are the machine learning resources and very few resources. So if you want to learn or start learning machine learning and what machine learning can do, I would suggest you to start with a machine learning course by Andrew Ng in Coursera. So that's the best lecture, one of the best lectures that is available on machine learning. So I would say if you're a newbie to machine learning, you would always go with the course of machine learning by Andrew Ng in Coursera. And there are a lot of other resources as well I can share with you. Maybe I can share with Gagan and then he might email you about the details if possible.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for sharing about courses. There's just an add-on to that, like you have, we saw your career path, right? Right from starting a career to MS to research, and just wanted to, how will you guide the students, those who are looking forward to see their future in machine learning or AI? So how do you think the companies are reacting? What are skills or how they can make themselves more competent?
So basically what I would suggest is in order to be good at machine learning, so start with pattern recognition. Basically a pattern recognition is some subject in computer science. So if you want to learn machine learning and develop new skills, I would say that first you have to be very wary about what research is going on around in machine learning currently. So when you want to start, I would say start with certain online course and then try to do projects rather than just doing learning the theory. So what I've done is at every point of time or whatever I learn, I was using certain project experience in order to build my skills. So when you start with a project, it's always going to help you a lot. So let's say you're detecting an object detection system. Let's say you want to detect a cell phone somewhere. So you start with that project, and particularly the Python programming is mostly vastly used by all of the people around the world right now. So using Python, you can start the project, and then at every stage, if you learn about what is the next skill that I have to acquire through the project, that's going to help you a lot. That's what my opinion is.
There's a question from Dr. Veer Bhadra Reddy. So what is the main objective of developing an autonomous vehicle? Like, in this sense, what is the need and how it benefits society as a whole?
That's a really good question, actually. So what happens is autonomous vehicles, why they're developed is because there are lots and lots of accidents around the world. So in the world, some people might be, maybe they're sleepy. They might actually close their eyes and then they put on an accident, or maybe some people are, maybe they're drunk and then they're driving the vehicle, and there are a lot of complications like this. So for autonomously navigating, what they're doing is they actually introduce certain different lanes for, as far as I know, they are planning to introduce different lanes for the autonomous vehicles. So mostly how they introduce is they introduce certain different lanes in which the cars will be autonomously able to navigate and not in the normal traffic. So the major application here is in order to reduce the number of accidents, in order to reduce the traffic flow, in order to increase the time that you can spend with something else rather than driving. I would say those are the major things that you can think of for autonomously navigating.
Right. There's a question by Dr. Labh Singh. So which type of machine learning is more prevalent and more popular?
So currently, I would say supervised learning is actually doing lots of things that are there. But the particular part of machine learning, which is unsupervised learning, which is deep generative modeling, it is actually catching a lot of interest. So I would say Jan LeCun has mentioned about GANs, the generative adversarial networks, where it is able to generate new faces using a prior distribution. So this is the best idea among like from the past 10 years. That's what Jan LeCun has mentioned in his own words. So I would say that deep generative modeling is currently the great research that is going on. So you never have, you never will have the labels for any data sets that you get. For example, in a new environment, you might get the data, but you do not get the labels. You don't know what it is. So it has to like automatically learn the representations inside the data. So I would say unsupervised learning and deep generative modeling are the great research that is going on right now.
Right. There's a question from Mr. Hari Krishna. He's asking, is machine learning useful for mechanical engineering students?
Definitely, yes. So let's say, as I mentioned about the medical domain that I have worked with. So basically, I've done my master's in mechanical engineering itself, but I have worked with artificial intelligence and robotics. So in the robotics, as I'm clearly explained about the topic that I've done the research with, you would definitely need certain mechanical engineering knowledge as well, or the basics of mechanical engineering. But I would say that it's not that completely you would go with mechanical engineering and then you can be a good computer scientist or a robotic engineer or robotic scientist. I would say it's more of interdisciplinary rather than just the mechanical engineering part of it. So you would definitely use certain things that are already thought of in mechanical engineering, but it's not the whole thing that you work with when you go to an interdisciplinary research. So as I mentioned about the project, it's an interdisciplinary research between the biomedical engineering, mechanical engineering, as well as design and optimization, and then the computer science. So it's always possible that whenever you take a project, you might be involved with certain interdisciplinary activities where you'll be able to learn different topics as well from different branches.
Right. There's a question by Shrikant: how to deploy machine learning models in AWS Cloud or Azure?
So that's one thing I think I haven't worked with yet, but
Okay.
so you would basically have to, so there is like Amazon Web Services, which is able to deploy, but I'm not exactly sure of it because I haven't worked with it anyhow.
Right. So Dr. Veerbhadra is like, he's asking question to your answer, like, can the autonomous vehicle technology used to assist drivers? Meaning it corrects driver whenever he or she is going wrong, which may lead to an accident.
That's a really good part. I forgot to mention about it. Thank you, Veerbhadra sir, for this question. So I'd like to mention particularly, there is a lot of research going on in understanding the driver's ability as well. So one thing is the lane assist that is there already in the cars that are there. So you don't need to have completely autonomous. It's a same kind of semi-autonomous system that is there in the cars. So whenever you go out of the lane when you drive, it's going to automatically correct by correcting the steering. So one more research that is going on, I think it's Nissan is actually using the brain-computer interface. Let's say you might have seen the recent video from Elon Musk. He's founded the Neuralink. Neuralink is something where you insert a chip inside your brain, and then it's going to learn the signals from your brain to automatically control how you navigate or how you move. So there is a current active research going on in understanding how the drivers would actually perform in different variable conditions, and then it's going to automatically correct the drivers. Or maybe you might have seen in a lot of movies, they can suggest something like, if you're sleepy, let's say, please wake up or move the system or just brake the vehicle or something like that.
Right. There's a question which got 6 likes, so it seems we have to ask it. So is AI is made of number of if and else statements? This is a question by Nikhil.
Well, that's a good question. So it's not exactly it's if and else statements. It's something like we did not hard program it. Like machine learning is all about, we actually do not hard program it. So we never know. It's still under consideration that explainable AI is something going on in research. So basically, we never know what the neural network or the deep learning system is learning. but it would automatically learn a model to predict something else. So it's not just if and else statements about machine learning, but there's a lot more to it.
So there's this question like by Indra Sena. So I want to pursue masters in robotics in Germany. I don't know where to begin in robotics. What should I learn first? This is like students normally like all of them will not go to getting into jobs and all. Some of them will actually see their career in masters. Like first they'll get into higher education and then they'll pursue their career. And there are people those who want to get into research. How will you guide like people those who want to pursue higher studies and research in this?
Well, I would say that you start with, let's say, if you want to acquire certain knowledge about something like machine learning. So I would say that whenever you're an undergrad and if you're planning for masters, you start with a project that is there in machine learning. Whenever you learn project through the learning process, you would learn various kinds of skills that are required for machine learning. And then if you're confident enough, then I would say that go with that. But when you want to do the research, it is always the project oriented learning. So you always start with the project and then go with the project from there.
What are the prerequisites for learning ML and AI?
Yeah, so that's one good question. So prerequisites would be the probability, introduction to probability and linear algebra, and then calculus. So I think in almost all of the students, they might have learned this linear algebra basics and then probability and then the calculus during their undergrads during the first year of their study usually. So I would say those are the prerequisites which are really required. And when you go through the machine learning lecture by Andrew Ng, you would be easily able to relate what I'm telling, like the linear algebra and then the probability and calculus. So calculus, why do you need calculus is a deep neural network would be actually be able to train with the help of backpropagation algorithm. In that backpropagation algorithm, you would basically take the gradients of the weights that are there. So you would definitely need these three: introduction to probability, linear algebra, and then the calculus as prerequisites for machine learning, and some part of the programming as well.
There's this question: what is generalized AI and how its impact? It will impact affect the present of application of AI. Taking the case of automated surgery.
So I don't think anyone has achieved already the artificial general intelligence. So right now there's lots and lots of research going on. In the presentation that I've mentioned, there is something which is closer to artificial general intelligence, which is AutoML, which is automated machine learning. So you would not be, so right now how the research is going on is, let's say I want to detect certain system, like let's say for the autonomous vehicles particularly, you would get the classes such as other cars or maybe some human or something else. So every deep learning system that we are working with right now is a task oriented learning, where it's going to learn for a particular task and it doesn't generalize well into the other tasks. So this is something like, if you can generalize that into some other task as well, or if you can autonomously, like if you can build a system, dynamic system in which it is able to think on its own or adapt to new kind of situations or new tasks, that's going to be something closer to general intelligence, artificial general intelligence. And I think we still have to go lots and lots of lots further to actually get closer to artificial general intelligence.
Right. So it seems the questions are crazy. It's already still 30 open questions, and we may have to like move towards winding up the session. Now we are already like at 8:15. Just one last question. Like, what is that one suggestion which you will give to the students, those who are into their final year, like to final year students? You know, the recession is up and all, and how the industry is reacting. How will you guide the students to react in this case, like during this pandemic?
Well, yeah. So I mean, so even this during the pandemic, I mean, there's a lot of hindrance to people right now. Like there's a lot of cut between the students and then the faculty. There's a lot of big gap in the communication that is there. But you would always, you can always use the online platforms and then learn a lot. So I would say that the best time that you can utilize during this pandemic is learning online. So let's say YouTube. YouTube, if you can take YouTube, there are lots and lots of lectures about machine learning, deep learning, and uh, other reinforcement learning and so on. So I would say that you have to best utilize the online resources in order to get out of this pandemic. And then basically you do not stop with not just the class learning. It is always good with online learning as well. So you can learn very new skills, whatever the crazy different skills that you have, different ideas that you have, you can try to implement that during this pandemic, and then uh, stay strong. Like there are a lot of people I know even has got COVID, but they're out of it right now. But yeah, so I would say use this pandemic in like a as a learning situation in which you take online classes like NPTEL as well as YouTube classes, and there are a lot of other lecture series as well online available. So I would say probably start with a certain project, and then through that project you can learn various skills online. So that's my best suggestion that I can give.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to take one permission. So can we share your LinkedIn like profile link with all participants so that they can connect with you? There are a lot of questions coming up, and maybe we'll not be able to take it now. So maybe
Sure,
they
sure.
can connect with you, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just adding this link in chat. You can all refer this link of Kuber Reddy Gorantla, and you can connect with him on LinkedIn. So as we are moving towards winding up, I request uh, Mr. Evan Dakshinamurthy, sir, to please come on platform and give word of thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Gagan. I'll reserve the vote of thanks to Mr. Rameshwar Reddy. Just a couple of words from my side. So, as always, G. Pulla Reddy Engineering College takes pride in its alumni. See, alumni is our strength. So, they are not just our brand ambassadors and mascots. They are actually our family forever. Once a GPRACN, always a GPRACN. And about WOW, so whatever I say, that is not enough, because I know Paresh and Gagan, they are full of energy when conducting such programs like this, because I've taken their alumni leadership program, and it was such a lively session that 6 sessions just like that flew, and we didn't even realize the time. So coming to today's topic, so our alumnus Kuber. So just like the other Kuber who gives money, this Kuber has made us richer with his deep insights on machine learning and deep learning with relatable examples. So his thanks for his time and knowledge sharing, and for illustrating such simple day-to-day examples which we can easily relate, and from a novice to an expert, so they could relate to the session. So with this a couple of words, like I'll hand over the baton to our alumni network backbone, Mr. Rameshwar Reddy, for concluding the session with his vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dakshinamurthy sir, and thank you, Gagan. Good evening, everyone. I feel honored to express my gratitude to everyone present for this eventful session. I remember Mr. Kuber entering the institute as a shy and docile guy. I think Kuber for such a lucid presentation and his patient answering to the participants' queries in today's webinar. Thank you, Kuber. I would like to thank Gaganjit and the entire Wavi team for providing such a wonderful platform for the alumni of reputed institutions to showcase and share their technical knowledge. I want to thank Dr. Veerbhadra Reddy sir, Dakshinamurthy sir, and the principal for the constant support to organize this event. And my heartfelt thanks to all the alumni, students, and teachers for active participation. Once again, I thank one and all for making this webinar a grand success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Like with your efforts, we were able to conduct the first webinar for GPRC, and I hope the alumni will keep on contributing towards the growth of GPRC. So thank you all. With permission of Dr. Veerbhadra, Mr. Rameshwar, and Mr. Eman Dakshinamurthy, along with our guest speaker, I would like to conclude this session.
Just as I just want to state something like I would like to
Sure.
congratulate GPRC in actually uniting the alumni and then the students together. So it's always a good sign that you're showing the direction to a lot of other colleges as well. And then the students will be able to benefit a lot from this. And there are lots of alumni who are actually interested in providing the session. So definitely this is a good start that I would say. And thanks, Wow, for organizing this event. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right. So as right, so like we are there for GPREC anytime. And just a small announcement that all the participants will be redirected to a small feedback link. Please help us with your valuable feedback. It will help us improving, and we'll get back to you with more power pack webinars. Thank you so much. Thank you all. We are winding up for today's session.